May 2026. The world was about to witness a failure of success. Anthropic, the creators of the world's most capable AI, were about to be crushed by their own popularity. Before we peel back the layers of this compute war, welcome back to the channel. We investigate the hidden machinery of the AI industry. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, consider subscribing and hitting the bell. Now, back to the data. In the first quarter of 2026, Anthropic's growth didn't just exceed expectations, it broke them. Annualized revenue exploded 80-fold, a velocity the entire tech ecosystem was unprepared for. CEO Dario Amodei had engineered the company for a massive 10 times growth. He got 80. In private briefings, he didn't celebrate. He called it just crazy, and more bluntly, too hard to handle. The gap between their roadmap and reality was a chasm. While competitors were fighting for market share, Anthropic was fighting for its survival against a tidal wave of unplanned demand. Behind the scenes, the shock was total. Engineering teams worked around the clock, not to build new features, but to prevent a total platform collapse as the infrastructure groaned under the load. They hit the wall. Every available H100 and B200 was running at peak thermal capacity. There was simply no more silicon left on the planet to buy. Anthropic was out of breath. For the users, the impact was immediate. Claude Pro and enterprise customers began seeing severe usage limits. Some were restricted to just a few messages an hour. The frustration was reaching a boiling point. The cost of success was becoming too high. The API, the backbone for thousands of startups, became a bottleneck. Anthropic was drowning in its own popularity, and the clock was ticking. They needed a miracle. They needed a sovereign-scale partner who moved as fast as the AI itself. But in May 2026, there was only one person with the keys to the compute they needed. Anthropic reached out to the one man who had recently called them evil and misanthropic: Elon Musk. The move was a desperate gamble that would rewrite the power balance of the entire industry.
Bankruptcy was a deadline, and Elon Musk was about to become the only person who could stop the clock. Anthropic had the world's most capable AI, but they were about to hit a wall that no amount of code could scale. A physical, suffocating wall of silicon exhaustion.
The silicon drought wasn't just a shortage, it was an apocalypse. The global supply chain had frozen solid. For Anthropic, the inventory was at a dead stop zero. The infrastructure was in thermal gridlock. From Dublin to Oregon, every available H100 was screaming at its absolute breaking point. The heat was physically melting the future. Cooling systems were failing to keep pace with the demand. Anthropic was drowning in its own intelligence, running out of ways to keep the machine alive. Then, the wall hit the users. Usage limits weren't just lowered, they were shattered. For the millions who relied on Claude, the frontier was suddenly behind a locked door. The 429 errors became a digital epidemic. Thousands of startups, the backbone of the AI economy, hit the wall simultaneously. The sound of a company reaching its absolute capacity. Behind closed doors, the panic was total. Internal cables described a company with no clear path to survival. The deficit was no longer just technical, it was existential. While OpenAI continued its relentless scale, Anthropic was frozen in place. In the AI arms race, compute is the only currency that matters, and Anthropic was broke. The supply chain was a ghost town. Lead times for servers stretched into years. They needed a miracle in weeks. The clock was ticking toward a final, fatal deadline. Bankruptcy was no longer a theory. It was a deadline. Total insolvency was weeks away. The world's most capable AI lab was about to disappear. In the dark, they began a desperate search for a sovereign-scale partner. They needed someone who moved with the speed of light. They found him in the one place they never expected. The Colossus One supercomputer, 300 megawatts of raw power. But to unlock it, they had to make a deal with their most vocal enemy, Elon Musk. The man who called them evil was the only man with the keys to their survival. The bailout was about to rewrite the history of AI. The compute war was moving from silicon to sovereignty. Let us dive into the rivalry that made this deal possible. To understand the Anthropic bailout, we must examine the primary target of Elon Musk's strategic focus: Sam Altman and the monopoly of OpenAI. The pivot was surgical. In exactly 90 days, Musk moved from public condemnation of Anthropic to becoming its most critical infrastructure ally. A reversal driven by cold geopolitical necessity. Simultaneously, Musk's legal war against OpenAI intensified. The lawsuit was no longer about non-profit ethics. It was a tactical strike against a rival's compute dominance. The logic was forensic. Elon's enemy was Sam. Dario's enemy was Sam. In the AI arms race, the enemy of my enemy is the only logical partner for sovereign compute. Musk's meeting with Anthropic leadership was an audit. He wasn't looking for a business deal. He was searching for signs of the same systemic failures he saw in his former partners. His conclusion was clinical. Everyone I met was highly competent and cared a great deal about doing the right thing. No one set off my evil detector. The endorsement was total. Musk believed that with critical self-examination, Claude would remain a positive force. The path to the bailout was officially clear. By arming Anthropic, Musk deployed a massive counterweight to OpenAI's market share. This was the first move in a protocol to break the monopoly on intelligence. The board was being reset. From Memphis to San Francisco, the infrastructure of the AI world was being rewired. This was no longer about software, it was about sovereign physical power. The stakes were absolute. Anthropic had secured their lifeline, Musk had secured his partner, and OpenAI was suddenly facing a rival with the world's most aggressive infrastructure engine.
The rivalry provided the motive. Now we examine the machine. Let us now enter the 300-megawatt fortress, Colossus One. The bailout wasn't just a signed contract. It was a mobilization of physical power at a scale the world had never seen. A brutalist architectural response to an intelligence crisis.
Memphis, Tennessee, a city about to become the epicenter of a continental compute mobilization, a high-security zone for the new AI elite. The search for compute ended with the mobilization of high-voltage power lines, a massive infusion of electricity required to fuel the next generation of thought. Colossus One, a monolithic facility designed for one purpose, to host the raw physical power that code alone could no longer provide. This was a power grid integration of over 300 megawatts, enough electricity to light up an entire city, dedicated to a single intelligence cluster. Then came the silicon, a convoy of high-performance chips diverted from global supply chains and funneled into the brutalist heart of Memphis. 220,000 Nvidia GPUs, the largest single deployment in history, forming an infinite horizon of compute. A sovereign scale reached in weeks. Endless cooling towers were required to dissipate the heat of 200,000 processors. A thermal manifold of unprecedented complexity, thousands of miles of fiber optic cabling, a neural network of glass and light, assembled at a speed that defied the history of infrastructure. The timeline was an ultimatum. A deployment that usually takes years was completed in exactly 30 days. This was compute at the speed of strategic interest. Behind these brutalist walls, Anthropic found its sanctuary. Colossus One became a fortress, a high-security node for the future of intelligence. The scale was now total. Anthropic had their silicon. Elon Musk had his alliance. And the compute crisis was officially neutralized. The physical wall had been broken. Now the limits could finally be lifted. Let us see the impact on the users. Claude, unlocked. The infrastructure was secured. The power was flowing. Now, the digital floodgates were about to open at quantum speed. The immediate result of the Colossus One deal was surgical. Anthropic flipped the switch on a neural grid optimization that would rewrite the platform's capacity. For the first time in months, the pressure was released. Claude Pro and Max users saw their 5-hour rate limits double instantly. This wasn't just a patch, it was an unlocking. Team and enterprise plans were the next to scale. The capability of the models hadn't changed, but the ceiling for their deployment had effectively vanished. The Claude API, the backbone for thousands of startups, was supercharged. The 429 errors that had plagued the ecosystem were deleted in real time. The sound of a system rebooting, peak hour limit reductions were permanently removed. Anthropic was no longer managing a hardware crisis, they were managing a sovereign resurgence. It was the ultimate tactical irony. Elon Musk had provided the very fuel his former rival needed to challenge the OpenAI monopoly, an unintended gift of sovereign infrastructure. The developer community's relief was palpable. The roadblocks were gone. The most capable model on Earth was finally free to run at full speed, powered by the most aggressive hardware on the planet. Anthropic's resurgence was now global. From the Tennessee Valley to the world, the neural grid was solid. The compute war had entered a new phase of sovereign dominance. With the physical wall broken, Claude code was running at full speed. Musk's hardware had saved the company and handed them the keys to a new AI empire.
The crisis is over, but the ambition is scaling beyond the atmosphere. Finally, we look at the next frontier: gigawatt orbital compute. The Colossus One deal was just the beginning. The partnership with SpaceX opened a roadmap to a horizon where physical limits no longer exist.
Anthropic is no longer looking for real estate on Earth. They are looking for sovereignty in the stars. A roadmap toward the first orbital AI data centers. The ambition is massive. Multiple gigawatts of orbital compute capacity, a scale of power that would make terrestrial data centers obsolete. Space offers what Earth cannot: endless, unfiltered solar power. In orbit, the energy to fuel the most powerful models on Earth is free, constant, and absolute. And then there is the cold. The vacuum of space provides the ultimate thermal sink for the hundreds of thousands of GPUs required to run the frontier. No fans, no liquid cooling, just the silence of the void. In space, there are no neighbors to complain about the noise or the heat. No political boundaries, no terrestrial constraints, only the law of physics. SpaceX's hardware is becoming the new backbone of AI infrastructure. The same technology that reaches Mars will now reach the limits of human intelligence. The industry is undergoing a fundamental shift. It is no longer about who writes the best code, it is about who owns the most sovereign infrastructure. The compute war has moved from the cloud to the stars. This is the new power balance, an alliance of launch capacity and intelligence, creating a physical monopoly that cannot be challenged from the ground. The trajectory is set. The future of AI is not in a data center in Virginia or a lab in San Francisco. It is in the orbital arrays of the SpaceX-Anthropic alliance. The bailout of May 2026 was just the catalyst. The true story is the birth of the first sovereign intelligence state, built on silicon, powered by the sun, and launched by the man who once called them evil. The compute war is over. The era of orbital sovereignty has begun. If you want to understand what comes next in the race for the stars, subscribe and hit the bell. We'll be here for the next mobilization. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for our next investigation.